Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And it is unfortunate that today we have to announce the passing of a true Hollywood titan, somebody who has had their name all over film for a majority of the 20th century, and that is Kirk Douglas. He has passed away at the age of 103. Now, this is not necessarily all that surprising. Obviously, Kirk Douglas was very advanced in age, and this was something that I think we all kind of saw coming eventually. I think he had had a stroke a year ago or so, so I think that maybe this is complications from that. Um, but it's important in these kind of scenarios where it's somebody who's very old, and it's kind of I, it's not good that they died, but it's one of those things that's it's expected, and it's something that we kind of at this point I think we should just honor his life. It's one of those things that he had a very rich, full life, and he was able to have that. And obviously, his some of his children have been successful, obviously, because his son Michael was very successful, and his son Joel is also a producer in Hollywood, as well as I believe his other two children are also involved in Hollywood in some way. And just to go over this, Kirk Douglas, especially back in the 50s and the 60s, he was a household name, much like his son would be years later in the 80s. He was such a good actor, and he was one of those people that was he was a very tough actor. He reminded me a lot of a Robert Mitchum type or a John Wayne, something like that. Kind of this very gruff, almost blue collar type of guy. That and again, I'm talking aesthetically how he seemed, not necessarily how he might have been in real life, but aesthetically how he came off. And again, it was one of those times where that was the age of leading men, and he was able to kind of stand out amongst the rest. In a lot of ways, and honestly, the favorite movie that I have with him is Spartacus. I really do love Spartacus, even though a lot of his other work got him nominated. He was a three-time Academy Award nominee for Best Actor. He did not win any of them, although they did give him a posthumous award years later. But he was nominated for 1949 for the movie Champion, 1952 for Bad and the Beautiful, and 1956 for Lust for Life. But still, the one that I most love him in is Spartacus, and maybe it's because Kubrick directed it. But Spartacus in 1960, it was a very well done movie, and that end scene is so iconic with the way that it takes place, where I'm Spartacus, It's done very well, because you can see that Kirk Douglas at one point, he's going to give himself up so that maybe they'll spare the rest of his friends and his men, but that everybody else just kind of stands up and they screw with him, and like he can't do anything about it. At that point, he realizes it's out of his hand, and he just has to go with it. Um, I love the way that Kirk Douglas acted in his films. He brought a sense of realism to a lot of his characters, and the other thing was he was also a veteran, and that's something that we do have to remember. He served in World War II from 1941 to 1944 in the U.S. Navy. He was discharged, I believe, if I remember correctly, due to medical complications because of something involving a depth charge. He was actually, if I remember correctly, he was in a submarine. So he knew about that life. He was one of those guys that he was in the military. He knew how shit worked, and I think that translated over because he was in some war movies as well, and I think he stood out very well in those too. Maybe even more so than some of his other roles. But he was a very good dramatic actor. He knew how to convey emotion. He knew how to express it, and it's one of those things that you just have to kind of look back on, and you're like, wow, that a career like his doesn't come along very often. And also to have his kids be so talented as well, and kind of indulge in that side of his life with him. He was also married to his second wife for I think a little over 60 years or 50 years, and I believe she is still alive, although she is a bit younger than him. There's not there's not a whole lot I can add to what people already know. he obviously dabbled in other things, philanthropy and charities and things like that. But just saying it is almost enough that Kirk Douglas has passed away for people that are familiar with older films or people that are familiar with uh, you know bigger names in Hollywood. A lot of people these days might not know Kirk Douglas. A lot of younger people, and that is unfortunate. I think you should check out his films. Like I've mentioned before, stuff like Lust for Life, stuff like Spartacus. Check out his movies. He does an amazing job with his acting. And I've always personally enjoyed him whenever I see him in a film, because a lot of the times, he's not necessarily always playing the same character. He's not kind of like a Robert Mitchum type. Robert Mitchum, for the most part, he had a little bit of a range, but he mostly played very similar characters, even though he played them very well. Um, Whereas Kirk Douglas, I think he kind of, even though he could play a gruff guy, he had a soft spot, and he could do that in films. Um, and I don't think Robert Mitchum had that range, and I think that's what kind of separated Kirk Douglas from Robert Mitchell is that, or Robert Mitchum is that he had that range. And again, it is unfortunate that we have to announce that he has passed, but like I said before, he lived a very long life. He lived a very full life, and he was able to grace us with some of the greatest films that we've ever had. So, in saying that, as usual, whenever somebody passes away, put in the comments what your favorite movie is from that person. Whether it's a director, whether it's director or actor. In this case, Kirk Douglas. What's your favorite Kirk Douglas film? Put it in the comments below. I'd like to know what you're thinking, and I'd like to know what you think about this. And I would also like to say to everybody out there, these people in Hollywood, the older generation, I think more younger people should be exposed to them, to their films, because it does give you a perspective on certain things. Spartacus, again, like I said, Spartacus is a great film. Lust for Life is a great film. Champion is a great film. But like I was saying before, again, put all those thoughts in the comments. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button. Subscribe. And remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?